Hello and welcome to another episode of Dallas Watch. I am Warren Johnson. I haven't mentioned this in the last few episodes, but we're going to put my wildwestwarren.com, my website up there. I got a blog under there. Look for blogs under the news tab. Also, my email address will be on there to contact me. We'll probably put it on this video as well. I hadn't heard from you guys in a long time, so if you got any questions or things like that, just send me an email. But today's subject is about historic preservation. We're continuing on from the last episode. Give you a little background. In 1966, when I was living over in North Oak Cliff, I was an 11-year-old Boy Scout, and Boy Scouts normally have to do a community service project. So it was one of those weekends we needed to go do that, and so we went to an old pauper cemetery off Fort Worth Avenue in Dallas, which just happened to be near my house, and we cleaned up the weeds and we mowed it and chopped down all the weeds, and I mean it was really badly overgrown. Well, lo and behold, what we find over there was a gravestone, and we'll put it up here, which was for Clyde Barrow and his brother Buck Barrow. I remember asking my dad about it. My dad grew up in Fort Worth. He was born in the 20s, so as a kid he kind of heard the exploits of these criminals, he called them Clyde and Bonnie. That's the way everybody referred to them back then, was Clyde and Bonnie. And they would just talk about it, not in glowing terms, but that's just who they were. They murdered people, they robbed people, and they ended up being killed in a shootout in Louisiana. Well then, lo and behold, the next year, a movie comes out. The beautiful and lovely Faye Dunaway, the handsome Warren Beatty, are in the starring roles, and now instead of Clyde and Bonnie, it's Bonnie and Clyde. And of course, it's a movie that when it's done, it certainly shows Bonnie and Clyde in a favorable light. They're just some rambunctious, Hollywood handsome kids, not even kids, young adults, you can tell them, and they're just out partying, and then sadly their days of love and so on have to come to an end. Well, that vision of them is far from the truth. Bonnie, she was a tramp. There's no way to get around it. She was married. Her husband went off to prison, so she started taking up with Clyde. Don't even bother to get a divorce. Clyde, little bitty punk, right out of prison, starts fooling around with Bonnie, and then they start robbing gas stations. I mean, they're robbing gas stations, all right? They're getting chump change. 20 or 30 bucks. They're robbing from people. They're not going to downtown Dallas, going into First National Bank and meeting Texas Rangers, battling them out and running away with $20,000. They're getting $15 or $20. And they're robbing people that when you take away their $20 from that gas station, that's all the money they have. This is in the Depression, 1932, 33, and 34. That's all the money they had. They weren't doing the little guy any favors. And they were robbing from the poor, and they were keeping it. So these are not people to be admired or to be historically reevaluated. And the reason I'm talking about it today, because in the last episode you saw that his father's gas station is now being considered, we'll show a picture up there, is now being considered, or there's a public push out there to make that an historical designation, to protect it historically, which to me was ludicrous because we had such beautiful structures and art in Dallas, and yet, look at that. Look at the Statue of Lee we're going to throw up there, juxtaposed against this picture of this gas station. It's just night and day, and it's just ugliness to its core. And Bonnie and Clyde, they were not nice people. Yeah, Bonnie was a poet, but Hitler was an artist. All right, so that doesn't mean squat. They killed 20 people, maybe. I mean, of all the hundreds of school shooters and mass shooters we've had, very few have gone over 20. If they were doing this today, Bonnie and Clyde would be considered mass murderers, and they were. There's no way to get around it. But something I want to put up there too. I want to put up this picture. This lady that you see up here, old lady, her name is Doris. All right. Doris was married to Ed Wheeler. We're going to put Ed's picture up there now. Ed was the last person murdered by Bonnie and Clyde. The latest movie that came out, I can't think of the name of it, Highwayman or something like that, is a little more truthful, and it shows that Bonnie literally executed Mr. Wheeler and the other patrolman while they were laying on the ground wounded. She blew their heads off. And he had been married to Doris for 2 years, if that much. And Doris lived to a ripe old age. You can see she's an older lady. She lived, I think, into her 80s. And this is what she said, okay? And this is from an article that I read. It said, Mrs. Edwards, she ended up getting married to a man named Edwards. Mrs. Edwards said popular culture had made heroes of the gang that killed her husband. She said, nobody ever thinks about those of us who were left behind by their antics and their lawbreaking, her son said. It just really bothered her a lot. It never really ended, this anguish. This was just a sad, sad part of her life. And that life literally lasted another 50 years after this murder. She had to put up with it. That was the legacy of Bonnie and Clyde. Nobody, you can go on YouTube or Google and you can get all manner of interviews and pictures and so on and so forth about Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker. You won't find any interviews with any of the victims' relatives or how they felt about it or how they were impacted, or maybe a son who was left without a father who ended up not doing very well in life, ended up being depressed. We don't get that, and that's a shame. And what the real shame is we have people like Robert Wolanski, the Dallas Morning News, and others that are trying to glorify this and say this is a part of history. I mean, I understand this with the Kennedy assassination spot over there. I see it. It's also a little glamorized, I think. I mean, I've been to Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., where Booth shot Lincoln. That's a little more subdued than it is here in Dallas. They don't have people walking around hawking, wearing silly hats, selling conspiracy stuff, even though there's a lot of conspiracy over Lincoln's assassination, but it still doesn't happen. But that's a shame. That's sad that has happened. So anyway, hopefully cooler heads will prevail or smarter heads will prevail, and this won't happen with that website, or not that website, but with that gas station, which just looks like a pit. And thank God Mrs. Wheeler, or the former Mrs. Wheeler, is now at peace, and she's dead. And I think it's time that we started remembering those people and giving them some of our sympathy and prayers. So anyway, great meeting today. That's all for today. Thanks. Go see the websites. Hey, go to www.returnlee@leepark.org. If you get a chance, please donate some money there. We are still we still need to fight this to get Lee back, to get him back in the park, or at least to save Pioneer Cemetery, and make a tax-deductible donation there. We are a 501c3 Texas nonprofit, and anything will do, $5, $100, whatever you can spare, because we got to get these attorneys paid, and we got to get them back on the thing. So anyway, great, thanks, and have a good day. So long. I really appreciate you tuning in to watch the show. Please hit the like and share button and share it with your friends and family. If you'd like to give us some feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Just email us at dallaswatch2020@gmail.com. Also, please consider a tax-deductible donation. You can go to www.returnlee@leepark.org. And also, don't forget, tune in every Friday, 7:30 Dallas time. New episode comes out of Dallas Watch. See you then. So long.